first, Steve Jeskowitz, Chair.
Pete McIntyre, Vice Chair.
Jerry Cheminsky, member. Steve, just to let you know, I'd only be on here till about 5:45, so if you need me for a quorum, let's act
Roger.
on it.
All right, I may do all the voting up front then. All right.
Okay.
Gary Schneider, member.
Wayne Donaldson, Ledyard Public Schools.
Kate DePalma Herb, member and Board of Ed representative.
Stephen June, Silver Petrucelli.
Dan Hetzler, ONG.
Okay, and I also see Mr. Hosey is online. This is a special meeting again this month, so we don't have a slot for citizens' comments, but welcome, Mr. Hosey. All right, do we have anyone else, Lisa, that's online that we're trying to figure out who's who here?
I don't think so. Kate, are you 961?
No,
Yep, that one's me.
Okay.
Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to move on to minutes approval. Attached to your agenda and linked online are the minutes from 17 May 2021. And I'll entertain motions to approve the minutes of 17 May.
so moved as written.
Okay, motion's been made.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Tominski. Any discussion of the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes as written, signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Aye, Pete McIntyre.
Jerry Cheminsky,
Gary Schneider, aye.
Kate DePalma Herb, aye.
All right, the ayes have it and the minutes are approved. Okay, I heard Gary Schneider, hadn't seen him before on there, so that gives us 5 voting members. So Jerry, if you do fall off to the meeting, we'll still be able to vote.
okay.
All right, I want to remind everyone that tonight is a special meeting, so we will be limited to items that are on our agenda for tonight. And we do have quite a few things to take care of tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and move on with that. All right, so the first item on the agenda is we have discussion, update, and possible action on the Ledyard School Improvement Projects. Item number, we're going to kind of rearrange the agenda a little bit, and we're going to move item 2 on the Gales Ferry roof package. Actually, it's part of a school project. It's being paid for. Let's just go ahead and do it in order. All right, the first item, item number 1 is kind of the kickoff. So 2 below it is part of 1. So on the agenda, Roman numeral 5, number 2, motion to approve Gales Ferry school roof crossover bid package. Wayne, you assembled that. I'm going to go ahead and turn over to you. If you would go ahead and discuss that, please.
Yep, thank you. Basically, you had asked me to get into the crossovers for the piping, and it's at Gallup Hill, not Gales Ferry. Lisa, if I sent that over as Gales Ferry, I apologize. And I did go out and get quotes, and basically different manufacturers came back with different size spans based on what they had. So the quotes are anywhere from 41,000 to somewhat over 50,000 for the material. So what I did was I put the bid together as a with the spans we needed, so that they could fit their individual pieces of ladders and walkways total into that. So this is basically it's up to an amount where we're going to be required to go to bid. I did ask, and only the vendors that I did get quotes from, if they were on state bid, which none of them were, and I couldn't find anybody that was. So this is basically just for the installation or the supply of the material, and we will take care of doing the actual installation on our end in-house.
Okay, I do have a question for you, and that is when I looked at the bid spec, I did not see any specifications for the gauge of steel or the loading and number, how many pounds they have to hold.
I can add that to it. That's not a problem.
Okay, and do you have those numbers from Silver Petrucelli, or
Yeah, I have.
you do? Okay, Wayne, I think you're muted.
Yep, I am. Hang on.
No, you're not.
No, now you are.
I wasn't. Yeah. Yes, I have that quote from Silver Petrucelli. I can pull that off and add it.
Okay, yeah, I think those need to be added. I don't know if specifically the gauge of a steel is what is important, but what they're rated for, and what the capacity needs to be. And I don't know which of those two go together. Steve June, is there anything you want to add to that?
We just gave them a proposal and some companies to look at. We really didn't go in depth into it. One of our roof engineers came up with those products. So I really can't give you a specific gauge depth, but they are rated for carrying material over the existing pipe work. So they are rated for heavy work, heavy material.
So I think in this case, Wayne, we need to specify in there what the load is on each of those independent. The second thing is, it's not clear that we're planning to award this work to one firm. We're asking them for prices for each of the individual ladders, and that's fine. So we have an understanding of their cost, but it's not like we're going to award a couple of crossovers to one company and a couple over to another. We're going to select one bidder. Is that correct?
Yes, but you notice in the wording, it says we have the option to reject all or part of any bid. So if something comes way out of whack on certain parts, we could go with multiple bidders.
Understand. All right. So with that, you want approval to be able to put it out for bid.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I move that we authorize Ledyard Public Schools, in this case Wayne Donaldson, to post the bid for as written with added weight and or steel gauge specification being added to advertise that for bid.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
It's been seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any further discussion? I do want to add one thing, even though we're not voting on spending the money, I just want to clarify this with my motion. In case anyone that's online isn't sure what we have here is, these are crossovers for the Gallup Hill School on the roof to get over the air conditioning ducting. When the design was done on the school, originally there were no crossovers for that. We were using ladders and things for safety reasons. We want to get proper crossovers up there on the roof that are stable, and it makes it a more safe environment. We had the option to do a change order and do it through the contract with O&G. We felt it was it would be more expeditious for the town to do this separate, although part of the project, but not part of the state project. It will wind up probably costing us less money in the end, and it'll allow us to close out the contract with O&G earlier. So with that, motion's been made and seconded.
I have just one question. Are these things going to be galvanized or painted if they're outside?
Spec is either galvanized, but there's options on there for other coatings like powder coated. We'll have to evaluate that depending on cost once the bids come in.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, any other discussion? If not, all in favor of authorizing the bids package to be published, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary Chemiskey.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Kate Topama Herb, aye.
Okay, with that, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 3 on the agenda. This is some change orders. In this particular case, what I'd like to do is go ahead, O&G, Dan, if you want to go ahead and explain the change order, what's involved in it, we'll follow along and then we'll vote on them one at a time. This is change order 225.
Very good. So as typically, we have been reconciling the last of the trade costs applied to what was their contract allowance for miscellaneous changes in their trade contracts. So what we have is resolving the HVAC contract, again, just the trade contract allowance portion. There's a net savings to what was carried for allowance. The individual costs are identified in the list of changes and summarized in a recap sheet.
Okay, I've had a chance to look this over. This change order has been signed by O&G. It's been approved by the architect, Steve June, for Silver Petrucelli. The total amount is a net reduction in GMP of $15,382. It appears to be in order. And I move that we accept change order request 00225 for the Gallup Hill School.
second, Steve McIntyre.
Second by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion on this change order? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the change order, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jusko, aye.
Steve McIntyre, aye.
Gary Chancy, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Kate, did I hear you? Out of order? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that an aye?
Kate Palmer Herb, aye. Yeah.
All right, thank you. That mute
You're
button gets me all the time. All right, change order is 225 is approved. Next, we have change order 226. This is also for the Gallup Hill School. HVAC glycol. Dan, you want to explain this one?
Yes, after taking on the project and understanding some damage that was done to a couple of pieces of equipment in one of the auxiliary classrooms. The root cause was a glycol leak. The HVAC contractor is responsible for that cost. O&G went outside and purchased the replacement equipment as discussed with this group several meetings ago. That equipment's been delivered. The agreement was that we would furnish only the replacement equipment as the current equipment is still in operation. It's a net zero to the GMP because O&G is taking the funds to pay for the equipment from the HVAC contractor.
Question on that. Dan, do you know, I don't have any record of the conference table ever being replaced.
I did not, this change order does not address a conference table.
Okay, yeah, it came down a conference table, which then swelled and fell apart. That was in that room. Somebody asked for information on it. I think it was Matt or Mike back whenever, the specifications on it.
So that would have been a table purchased by FF&E.
FF&E, yes.
Falling, yep.
Yep.
And I do recall the conversation and the request off to Steve June for trying to hook us up with replacement cost materials. I don't know. It goes back some time now, Steve, so I'm not sure where that landed.
Yeah, I don't remember that offhand, but I can follow up with Amanda in regards to that.
So is the intent on that, Dan, that we are going to order a new table from that vendor and submit that back to Action Air for reimbursement? What would the approach be on this?
That would be the same approach as what we've just utilized here. The only caveat would be, I haven't given HVAC or Action Air a heads up that there was additional damage. So any backup photographs or just some documentation. I think it should be fairly straightforward, Wayne, if it all
Yeah, we
happens
still have
at
the
the same
table.
time and you
Yeah,
still
we
have
still have the table, so it's still available. We were just holding it.
and it was in the same room and underneath the same
Yes,
leaks.
correct.
It all seems fairly straightforward, Steve.
Okay, so Wayne, please make sure that we add that. I hate to say add that to the punch list, but add that to the items that we're tracking. It's not really a punch list item. It's a fiscal item that we need to clear up.
Yep.
All right, that is separate from this particular change order, though. So with that, this change order, net zero change order, but the money has to move between buckets. With that, I move that we approve change order 226, a net zero change order, HVAC glycol.
Second, Steve McIntyre.
Seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any further discussion on this particular change order related to the AV equipment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the change order, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Juskowitz, aye.
Steve McIntyre, aye.
Gary Chancy, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
All right.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, and that change order is approved. All right, so now, before we move into the next few things on the payment of these invoices, what I'd like to do is to go back to our general discussion that we have at each of these meetings to talk about what work's been going on in the school, progress made in this case on punch list items, what items we feel are still remaining. I believe for O&G, you had indicated to us that with the exception of items that we're waiting on material for, that the bulk of the items would be cleared by our next meeting. I think this is our next meeting. So we'll go ahead and start out with the Ledyard Middle School. So Wayne, if you want to start out discussing status at the middle school. We've gone through some interesting heating and cooling cycles over the last week, which stressed, I know my work systems have been stressed big time. I decided to work in a different building today because it was so hot. But and I'm sure our houses are seeing it as well. So Wayne, why don't you go ahead and start Ledyard Middle School, please, and then we'll
Okay.
follow up after you with O&G and then Silver Petrucelli.
Okay, we did have a, I did get a call from Chris to, they wanted to get in and do some work this past Wednesday. But the school is, well, no, that was at Gallup Hill, never mind. Basically, we're still having significant issues with the HVAC system. We had another failed VFD on unit 1. This is the 3rd failure of that unit. I believe they replaced it once. They replaced a fan in it. Now a second fan has gone. We're still having issues with the BMS system as far as we have heating valves opening up when it's calling for cooling. Johnson Controls does not know why that's occurring. And I'm not sure at this point if they're actually looking at it. I did touch base with Steve June today on the BMS system, or actually the radon system, to see if that was being tied into the BMS system by contract. Steve is also working on the water hammer issue. I had a vendor out, who manufacturer of the pressure reducers, who does not believe that the right pressure reducers were installed. And that's causing, they believe that's what's causing the water hammer problem in middle school, plus Juliet Long. Why it's not affecting Gallup, Gales Ferry, we don't know.
Hey, Wayne, hold up for a second there.
Yep.
2 things. I want to go back to the radon and the BMS system.
Yep.
Is that just simply, it's not controlling those radon fans, it's just indicating that they are running, correct?
Yes, it's just, I believe it's just monitoring them, but maybe Steve can chime in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mechanical aptitude is limited. I did put a call into our chief mechanical engineer. I'm just waiting for a response back from him.
Okay, and the second item, Wayne, on what you brought up there is, we went round and around once before with the water pressure reducers coming in the building. Am I correct that this is, we installed 2 of them specifically in this arrangement based on Groton Utilities direction during the, while we're building the building, is that correct?
It's my understanding, yes, that it was changed from 1 to 2 by Groton's request. What I don't know or don't have any documentation on yet is if they specified the specific pressure reducer, or they just said they wanted 2 on each line, and then it was chosen by either Steve or the contractor.
Okay, Dan, I think you were the project supervisor, you were the project manager at that time. Do you, for Ledyard Middle School, do you recall?
I do, in that I recall being requested by Groton Utilities that the initial single 4-inch RPZ and meter be installed instead as a pair of 2-inch meters with 2-inch reduced pressure valves. The typical process would have been submission to the design team for the for the reduced pressure devices, that they were installed after approval, and that it's been in service for now going on 2.5 years, 3 years, if not longer.
And the water hammers, Wayne, I don't recall until the last month or 2 where we really started talking about water hammers. Did we not have them in the first 1.5 years?
There were none reported at the middle school. There was significant reported at Juliet Long, which we replaced equipment there. It continued, and then when the water fountain leak came in a second time, was able to trace it back to the middle school. And they were able to watch when toilets were flushed at both schools, the significant pressure drops at the middle school. And then I had the representative from the manufacturer of the pressure devices out, who said that they are the wrong ones because they're basically cranked 100% down. There's no additional adjustment in them. And that shouldn't be for a pressure device. It should operate somewhere in the mid-range.
Okay, we got to continue to chase this down, but I do recall from the meetings that what we put in was what was directed by the water company, and we didn't have any give in that we had to put in what Groton Utilities said to put in, or we weren't getting any water. So this is one of those things we may see a lot of finger pointing going on. We need to resolve it. But the only issue we're having is water hammer issue. We're not having, we don't have a sprinkler flow issue of concern or anything to our knowledge, correct?
No, we don't. But the water hammer is affecting the neighboring houses also. So it's not limited just to the schools. It's the 3 or 4 houses that are just before the schools on the end of the line.
And what is Groton Utilities saying we should be doing? Replacing those with different,
Well, they suggested that we add a expansion tank to take up the buffering, which we did at Juliet Long, which had no effect. We've complied with all their suggestions. Basically, we changed the pressure reducer rate, Juliet Long. So everything they've suggested we've done, it has had no effect.
yeah, something tells me this, we're not causing this problem here, but we'll have to let the experts at Groton Utilities look at it some more because to be honest with you, they could isolate the middle on a day where you could isolate for a period of time. They could isolate the middle school and see what the impact is downstream, but we're not going to solve that on this meeting. So just keep us posted as we continue to do
Yep.
that.
It's an informational basically at this point.
We were down to a handful of items on the punch list at the middle school. Roger, everything you said on HVAC issues. And the VFDs continue to be a problem here. And, you know, I'd be interested to see what the failure rate on our VFDs are compared to the norm for these, because, you know, installation quality is one thing, but then there's also the machine itself.
Yeah.
What are we seeing for, what else do we have going on in the Ledyard Middle School?
Nothing. They haven't really done anything. So we're chasing an odor in the science rooms. We had that problem in the hallways and stuff. I don't think it's related to that, but that same odor is now showing up in the science rooms. So we thought it might be a drain issue because the prep rooms between the science rooms weren't used. So we did go through a process of making sure all the sink drains and traps were filled and stuff. But there's no rhyme or reason. It's not consistent. It just shows up for 24 to 48 hours and then goes away. So I don't know what that is. But other than that, everything else is pretty much, you know, we're still having individual problems with stuff that was corrected. The doors going out by the media center, they weren't locking. O&G had them back, the contractor back to repair them. They worked for 3 or 4 months, and you know, I got a call the other day that they're not locking again. So I don't have a report from my technician that went over there yet, what he found. It may be totally unrelated to what they did, but you know, some of the things they did and cleared up are kind of returning.
Okay, we're on middle school. Dan, I just heard from Wayne. He said that nothing's been going on in the middle school. I know we only had a few punch list items there. Do you have anything to say on middle school work that's been done in the last 3 weeks?
No, Steve, actually, I don't believe that the miscellaneous metals contractor got out there. I know that 2+ weeks ago, he asked for some final dimensions, and I went out there to get those pieces of information specifically for the new roof ladder that we spoke to at the last meeting. He had everything fabricated with the exception of that ladder, and I did not hear back whether or not he had gotten out to the site. In my quick discussion with Mark Jeffco, who personally put the pressure on that contractor, he had not heard either. So unless Chris has heard, I believe that, you know, that's the one significant item left, was the 4 items on the punch list related to miscellaneous metals. Chris, do you know if that work happened on the Wednesday of the 2nd that it was planned?
No, it didn't. And Mark, myself, and even a few other people are trying to find out why and when they're coming out. So.
Okay, well, I know that everything is fabricated. It's a matter of bolting those safety rails, and as mentioned at the last meeting, the proposal that we got from them included a replacement ladder in lieu of reshifting over the existing.
But if I'm correct, I think you guys said 17 June was, I believe, the date that you felt that was going to be done by in the punch list before last. So we're not there yet, but we're getting close.
Just so you know, Dan, the last day of school is next Wednesday, the 16th. So you will have open access after that point.
Yeah, Wayne, we're scheduling a few things for Wednesday, you said is a half day, right? And then,
Wednesday is a
After that.
half day.
yep.
Yes.
yep, we have a few items scheduled, so I'll send you an email with what's
Okay.
gonna happen at both schools.
That's fine.
Okay, Steve, June, do you have anything to add on the Ledyard Middle School?
No, just waiting for the punch list to be completed, and I think a lot of our HVAC issues have been resolved. So I don't think there's any heavy work with the HVAC on our side. So,
Yeah, I understand that when a piece of equipment that's installed, that was installed per the plan fails, that's not really an architect issue, that's a warranty repair issue.
Mhm.
The only thing I would ask for you guys at SPA, if we are getting these VFD failures at if the mean time between failure is much less than it should be, I don't know if that's something in the what should we see based on the specified units? I don't know if Marty can take a quick look at what we're seeing for the failures, because I know he wouldn't normally see, failures being reported back to the engineer. But if that was something that was specified and we're seeing a higher failure rate than we would expect, and based on what Wayne's saying, I think we're seeing a higher failure rate than we should.
Yeah, I think this is the 8th one we've had an issue with.
And how many are installed at LMS total, you think?
Well, the failures go across both schools, but 2, 4, 6, probably about 12 to 20, depending on, some of them have 2 per unit, some have 1.
Okay, and that's across both schools.
Well, you
No.
could probably figure a little bit more with Gallup Hill, maybe 35 to 40 total.
Okay.
It's probably
Okay.
close to 20% that failed.
And they have the same manufacturer in both schools, correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a data point we can take a look at. What should the failure rate be? And then the question becomes, one is, do we have a different condition than is normal for some reason? Were they improperly installed, or we just have a bad batch of VFDs? That's something we have to take a look at.
I can talk to our mechanical engineers.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the Gallup Hill School. Wayne, we'll start with you.
Okay. Again, they're at least not reported of any significant work on the punch list. There's still a significant noise issue in rooms 167 and 168 with the chiller. Actionair has been out. They've heard it. They don't know why it's occurring. They gave us some suggestions on adjusting items within the BMS system, which he did, which helped a little bit, but it's still significantly really noisy. It's noisy enough to be disrupting to the class.
Wayne, are you talking about the chiller mounted outside the building is making the noise that they can hear inside the classroom?
It is in the piping in the water flow that runs through that classroom. It goes through 2 classrooms and then up to the roof.
All right, I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were
Yeah.
telling me the actual chiller was making the noise. It's actually
No.
the chilled piping. Okay.
Yeah, it's the flow of the water in the piping. Kate can probably chime in. She was there when we tested one day, and she can vouch for the fact that it is well beyond anything that should be normal.
Yeah, it sounded like a washing machine. It was definitely distracting, like loud enough to be distracting in a classroom.
There shouldn't be any air in that system, correct?
Correct. And this has only occurred since the glycol leaks. So I'm not sure what occurred, whether the system wasn't bled properly. They think it's something to do in the bypass on the pumps, possibly. But I don't know. We've had it looked at multiple times. Actionair has been out. They don't have an answer. But it's definitely an issue. And the first year they did not report any problems with it. It only started last summer after the glycol leaks.
Okay. On this specific topic, Dan, do you have anything to add on that, or do you have anything to offer?
No, and I didn't follow up with, I know that Vinny, or the Actionair's owner, was out there himself. He was following up to see what he could find out, and I have not touched base with him to get some new information.
All right. And
He
this
did not believe it was related to an air problem, as if the full bleed hadn't occurred. He thinks it has something to do with just the hydraulics of the movement of the water, as Wayne mentioned.
All right, well, that's not, as designed, we shouldn't be getting that kind of noise. So what is other than, looking back and forth and saying it might be this, it might be that, what's the solution here to reduce that noise? Are we talking about insulating the pipes? What?
I'm going to have to go back to Actionair, who's aware of it, and find out the feedback that they got after seeing and hearing it in person.
Okay, is this something that needs to go back to the mechanical engineers that designed the system, or is it still in the installation lane at this point?
Currently, it's still at Actionair's responsibility.
Okay, with the weather we're having right now, we should be getting a lot of chilling going on, so we should be generating enough noise. I doubt we're going to have this problem resolved before school ends next week, so let's run that system and get people in there, and if we need to fix this problem, fix it now.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's not a consistent problem. It comes and goes. So it's sometimes there's absolutely no noise, and other times it gets really, really loud depending on, the flow of the water.
That's the worst kind of problem.
So Wayne, this is Kate.
Yep.
I thought you guys through your troubleshooting had narrowed down the conditions under which it makes the noise, and you were able to reproduce it.
We can reproduce it. Yes, we can make certain changes in the BMS system that reproduce it. What we don't know is if those same changes are what's actually occurring naturally when it happens without us forcing it.
Okay, but you could at least reproduce the noise so they could hear what we're talking about.
Yes, and we've done it with Actionair out there, and they actually brought out their expert, and they suggested some changes, which we did, which, when they were there when we made the changes, and it did have an effect. It did lower it at times. At times, it's still as loud as it was.
Are those variable speed pumps, Wayne?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Well, we need to obviously, and Steve June, if you'll make a note of that, please make sure that that Marty is informed on some of those emails. At least he may have something to add to this discussion as we move forward. All right,
Will do.
Wayne, we're still on the Gallup Hill School. I know that when we had our last meeting, we discussed a lot of doors. We discussed fire doors. We discussed labels on fire doors. We discussed Park Roadway and other things. So again, that was 3 weeks ago. So I believe I saw a lot of emails flying back and forth and pictures and things. I believe some of those things have been cleared. It was after our last meeting, I believe, that Chris Rizzi was sending a lot of those emails back and forth. So
Yes, basically on the fire doors, there was a question because fire doors have to have a tag on them. And then Chris finally did send me documentation within the code that allows, if you're using a continuous hinge, to move the tag to a different area of the door. So that's basically what I asked for. So if we get questioned by a fire marshal at some point where they are, we've got documentation that they were installed per code.
well, in that case, they didn't actually move the tags. That's where the tags are put by the manufacturer, correct?
Yes. Yeah, the manufacturer does it in the shop, knowing that it's a continuous hinge or not.
Yeah. So, I mean, which is fine. As long as I have that on file, if I had ever get questioned by a fire marshal or something, because, in other locations, I have been questioned, because they, a tag was painted over or, was pulled off by a kid or something. So I wanted to make sure I had that documentation if we ever get questioned, that we're not going to have to go through and replace fire doors because tags.
So this wasn't brought up by the fire marshal himself, though, correct?
He did originally, and I said, I don't know. So let me get the documentation.
Okay, have we notified the fire marshal of what the fire code says, so he won't
Yes.
ask us this again?
Yes, I made him aware of it.
Okay, that's
Yep.
that's a little bit concerning to me that our fire marshal did not know that, but
Well, they know the tag has to be there, and he would have to go, I can't necessarily say that everything that I requested him or asked him, he knows off the top of his head. Many times he has to go back and look up the statute and see how it refers. So it's probably one of those that he knows there's a tag has to be on the door, but exactly how it's affixed or whatnot may or may not be off the top of his head. We did have an issue with the cooling unit in room 140, which is the IT room. This is the third or fourth incident with that. When I took it back to Action Air, they said that they have no reports of any issues with that unit. So I don't know or how they track, but I did send them a couple of emails where that unit was turned over to O&G. And I sent them a video of the unit that was taken a year and a half ago with it ticking, because basically there's a refrigerant leak in it, and it loses refrigerant, which ices up the unit, and the fan starts hitting it, and you can hear it ticking away on the fan. So we were able to recharge the unit. It's operating now, but this is about every 6 months or so. It loses enough refrigerant to no longer be effective. So somewhere in I had my guys chase it. They couldn't find any obvious refrigerant leak. So where we're losing the refrigerant in that unit, I don't know. And part of the other thing I brought up to Action Air, was that the damper, these are the split units, and that bottom flap opens and closes, and that they held that together with a tie wrap. And that happened to be very clear in the video I sent them, that back a year and a half ago, that tie wrap was there, and it's not something new that occurred before it was out of warranty. So basically, they're responsible. It's out of warranty. So I'm a little concerned that, they had no record of any work being done on that previously. But again, that goes back to like the kitchen equipment, that the vendor had no record of being reported by O&G, even though we had returned it into O&G multiple times. The other issue we have is in the principal and assistant principal's office, there are credenzas that were supposed to be installed on the desks. Red Thread was out 3 times to install them. Each time Silver Petrucelli confirmed with Matt that the panic buttons had been moved, which were on the wall where these credenzas had to go. 3 times they came out and couldn't install them because the panic buttons had not been moved. So now they're looking for some additional money and time to come out and put those up now that the panic buttons have finally been moved. And the last thing I have is, as you know, and then at your later on in the meeting, you have an invoice for Mason to come out and do some repair work to eliminate the leak in the ceiling in the lower level. I talked to Steve, he okayed me to go ahead and forward with it. The quote I had originally given him was considerably more. I think it was $800 or $900, the verbal quote I got from him. So basically he came out and found some significant holes around the electrical box that was installed through the outlet outside the door, and the water port plate and stuff that were installed. He caulked those, did some caulking around there. And as you know, we had some torrential rain over the last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And we did not get any water infiltration on that lower level. Before that, we had changed the ceiling tiles, put them up, and there was no sign of any damage to the tiles or any infiltration in that area.
All right, that's good. That's actually really, really good to hear, because I know we were looking at that problem and there was, Dan, when we talked about this, there was no scope of work that really involved that area. And we were looking at whether we needed to excavate that wall and seal it, and there's a bunch of different discussions going on. If it was as simple as some caulking in some places, that's good. That's $350 very, very well spent. And we'll address that invoice as we get further down on the list. Wayne, your comments on the air conditioning being, who charged it though? Did Ledyard Public Schools charge the Freon every time that it's needed charging, or has it been done at all by Action Air?
I'm assuming it was done by Action Air because the situation was corrected, the unit ran properly, and then it went out again. This last time we've charged it.
All right, so I'm a little bit confused. If Action Air has no record of any problems with the unit and they came out and charged it several times, something doesn't make any sense there. And, the Action Air knows that we've had a problem with the unit in the past. Recharging every 6 months is obviously excessive. This is a separate little Mitsubishi kind of split system just for the AC room, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Yeah, and in this case here, we don't believe that there's equipment that's faulty. It's installation of lines that may have been an issue.
That's what I'm thinking because, at the unit, we're not seeing any, usually when you have a refrigerant leak, you'll get some oil residue or something else. All the visible lines we see, I had them take the insulation off where the elbows were sweat on and, the lines bend to be sure there wasn't a kink that damaged the pipe. We're not seeing anything that can tell us the leak is in this specific part, but it does go up through a cavity in the wall that we can't access. So we don't know if it's occurring in that cavity.
It's rare that those occur actually in the piping. Do you have a freon detector?
No, but I'm not opposed to purchasing one and have it done.
Well, a freon detector would be helpful here to detect the leak you can't really see. All
Yep.
right. I want to go back to this, a couple of the other comments that you made. Well, actually, let's go over to Dan on the Gallup Hill School. I do know at our last meeting, we were discussing doors that were hole opens that were worked on in the morning and then potentially in the afternoon, the same door was giving us a problem. Where are we at with the installing of the new door hold opens in the Gallup Hill School? Are we done with doors?
Well, all of the hold opens were replaced at that window of time several weeks, or actually probably about 6 weeks ago now. As far as a follow-up to our discussion at the last meeting, were several of the doors which had been, that weren't held open or weren't holding open any longer. I didn't have a follow-up with Park Rowway to see if they had missed a few doors, and I didn't get a chance to see if, to actually walk them with Wayne, or if Chris had an opportunity to walk them with Wayne to find out. As we understood, when they walked away from it, they had essentially back-checked the locations that were claimed were not right, and that was about 2 or 3 weeks after they were initially replaced. So I don't have new news for you is the short answer there. I don't know if there's any additional ones, or if we're still limited to several that didn't hold up after replacement.
And we replaced all of those door closers, correct? Everyone in the building, or just the ones that were giving us a problem?
We replaced 48 in Gallup Hill, or 49 in Gallup Hill, and 48 in Ledyard Middle. And that would be all of the doors that had that particular stay hold open, where you just push it and it stays on its own.
Items that were on the punch list of particular interest that we had some concrete discussions, and we're going to talk about concrete here in a minute, but things like flagpoles not being level. I saw a note from Chris about benches being reset and things, but where do we stand on nuisance things like flagpoles that aren't straight? Do we bend the flagpole?
On that particular one, I wasn't facing that one. Chris was going to see if there was anything else that could be done. I don't know how that turned out.
Steve, I looked at it, and I got to get Gerber out there. He might have to dig the whole thing up.
All right, how far out, how many degrees?
1 inch in 35 feet. So if you're erecting steel, we're well within it. I get it's a flagpole, but I put the laser on, it's 1 inch in 35 feet.
Okay, what's the tolerance that we should see? I mean, is there a standard?
For me, you go by a structural steel standard, which is, I forgot what it is.
It's 1/4 and 10, but
1/4 and 10, right? So, you're right at it, if not a little bit within it. But it's
So
tough to look at it.
I know Gerber's been out on the site twice to try to do some correction, but that was last summer when I was, working intimately with Gerber, trying to wrap their punch list items up. At that time, they didn't think they could get any more adjustment out of the base. And I don't know if, Chris, you saw the bolts and the nuts.
Yeah, they're maxed out.
All right, let's see what they can do. If they're maxed out and they get us to 1 inch within true, well, let's see what they say when they come back out on this. Dan, what else do you have on Ledyard Middle School? And do we want to talk about concrete? What are our final decisions on bringing out the concrete whisperer, so to speak, to walk that and take a look at the concrete? Where are we at?
Well, the action was to, walk with Wayne and the contractor to determine the limits of the areas of concern. Unfortunately, due to some timing, scheduling things, we weren't able to put that walkthrough together before tonight's meeting. That is still the action, is that I have Costa and Sons who placed all the flat work out there. They're going to come out. We're going to find out what exactly the areas of concern are, that where the damage or where the material doesn't appear to be holding up through normal wear and tear.
Okay, when do we think that's going to occur?
We were imminent, and unfortunately, Mario Costa's wife was in the hospital this past week. So I would say it's something that we could get done in the next 2 weeks.
Understand. Okay. Do you have anything else to add on the Ledyard Middle School?
Or speaking to the Gallup Hill.
I'm sorry, Gallup Hill, sorry.
We'll chase action there again on the refrigerant item that was just spoken to. With respect to the panic buttons, I did not follow back up with Wayne to see what kind of, I don't know when the buttons were actually moved or where these credenzas have been sitting or since the FF&E was installed back in 2019. Are they physically on site? Is it a matter of just having the labor to set those things in place?
Yes, they're actually sitting on top. It's a two-piece credenza. There's a base and then there's an elevated section with doors. The elevated section is just setting on the base. So there's no way to use that countertop space that the base would be.
Is this just a matter of putting them on there and screwing them into place?
Pretty much. There's a back panel that goes on. And I have tried to get the instructions so that I've attempted to have my guys go over and do it. And the instructions are not clear at all. I mean, if you can get me some kind of decent instructions on how to assemble these.
Well,
I
this
can have my guys do it.
wouldn't come from Dan. This would come
Yeah.
from Red Thread,
Yeah.
which is the separate, doesn't go through O&G.
Right.
Yeah, I can talk to Amanda about getting instructions.
Yeah, I mean,
I have
I'm
some
not
of those.
opposed to having my people go do it. And I've sent them over to attempt it. It's just that, what we're seeing online that we found doesn't anywhere near match the material we have.
Sounds like an IKEA thing to me. All right. All right. Well, let's resolve this by getting the instructions, and just putting some bolts in. This is probably not rocket science here. What other items, Dan, do you have for Ledyard Middle School, if any?
No, just that
Steve, this is Chris. We forgot about the radon fans for Gallup. They're getting installed on Wednesday, along with the electrician's gonna finish wiring them. So that item will be off as a Wednesday.
So now the question that will come up with Wayne on BMS is, are they supposed to be wired into BMS, do we think?
Well, there's where the specification between the two projects diverged, in that in the Ledyard Middle School, it was test and if required. And then at Gallup Hill School, the spec said, regardless, it's an active system. So install per criteria A, B, and C, which was install the fan, provide power to it, and monitor. Essentially, it monitors pressure differential. If the pressure differential is no longer there, it means the fan's not running. So it is in the base BMS spec, or base BMS contractor's responsibility at Gallup Hill. That said, the opportunity to put in a differential pressure sensor after piping is complete would have to be investigated as far as where we could put those differential pressure taps. I thought that when we spoke to this last, putting the system in place or making it active on both projects and providing power to it was adequate. Again, but not to dismiss that it is base contract. It is HVAC's responsibility to provide that BMS monitoring should it be required.
I think we want to get what we paid for. So that's what they bid. They should put in what they paid for. Not to mention, it doesn't hurt to have that sensor. It's just another thing to let us know the system's operating the way it should. Chris, is that all you had to add? Really?
Yeah, Steve.
All right, thank you. Steve, June, anything to add on LMS before I drop the big question on Dan?
Yeah, no, just waiting for the punch list to be done and spending probably about 15 minutes a week, maybe with Wayne and Marty in contact with Wayne. That's pretty much it for SP&A.
Okay, so Dan, the big question is the same question I asked you 3 weeks ago is when will we be, the miscellaneous metals stuff you gave us some dates on, when will we be punch list free in LMS and Gallup Hill School?
I'm scanning through the list here, and I know that Chris has been more intimate with, how contractors are responding. When we speak to 100%, we do have these individual isolated items that are contentious. So in looking at what I see on this list, we've managed and responded to, better than 50 to 70% of the list has been responded to, and maybe 50% accepted. The remaining items, of some of which are problematic, flagpole, building not power washed, that's a big one for us. I would say I just don't want to overspeak. I know that Chris has been more intimate with it, and I'm personally, haven't been finger on the pulse.
Okay, I
Chris,
know we
what's your, well, to get a response, I mean, Chris, do you think that some of these other items, there's probably these 30 or 35 items here?
I think by the end of next week, Steve, we should be about 95%. Now that school's out half day Wednesday and out Thursday, Friday, makes things a little bit easier for me to get people there. And like Dan said, if there's 5% that we're still in disagreement in, but I think by Friday, I think we had the 17th, right? Is that Friday of next week?
Thursday's the 17th, Friday's the 18th.
Okay, so I think we're right about there.
Okay, let's try to make these dates. Now with that, Dan, is we don't have an application for payment from O&G tonight. Is that we at the point now where we can just have one final requisition? And have we seen the last change order?
I'll answer the second question first. No, you have 2 more change orders from trades. I'm closed out. I now received the documentation to close out the last 2 allowances. And then with that closeout comes the return of remaining contingency and adjustments to O&G's final costs. I think it's still a 2-part process for that reason. The one item that I would like to speak to, and that's just getting confirmation that these items are either removed and I'm not holding funds on a particular trade, is paramount to my ability to finalize that requisition. We have received some responses back from Wayne on items that are unacceptable, but nothing saying that an item is clear. It's at some point I've got to determine that an item is cleared. So that I don't hold those funds.
I sent you back the list with either agreed with the date with my initials and a date on it in green, or a note of why it wasn't acceptable.
On Gallup Hill?
I think so. If not, I will forward it to you.
Perfect.
All
That
right.
would help me get to, thank you. Steve, because I've got the one that's been pressed now and in the queue, which will get us to that next step.
Okay. Our next meeting is going to be, and Lisa, help me out here. It's not the 5th because that's a holiday. Is our next meeting scheduled for the 6th or the 12th?
It's actually the 7th, Wednesday, the 7th, because we're closed on the 6th as well.
Okay.
But
Wednesday.
I do have to note, because I have vacation time. So anything to be on that meeting, I will need because I'm going to be out of town. So I will need it by actually, I'll need it by Tuesday, June 28th, because I have to post the agenda on the 29th, because then I'm gone.
Okay, in that case, Dan, whatever you have for an application, get to Lisa for inclusion by that day for both schools. Excuse me, no, for Gallup Hill, we closed out LMS. So have one there, and then we'll expect to have one more later than that. We can also add things to the agenda. It's a regular meeting, so we can, if in fact it's not in on time, we can add it to the meeting because it's not a special meeting, because it's our scheduled meeting, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right, we'll do that. All right. Does Does that make sense, Dan?
Yes.
All right, and that will allow you and Wayne to communicate on, what I'd also like to have at that next meeting is a final, is a cleaned up punch list that shows exactly what is remaining at our next meeting. And by then we should be able to fit it all on one page for each school. Correct?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. We're
Right.
at one
And
page.
this isn't about using 6-point font either. This is 12-point font, one page. All right.
I'll give you 10.
All right, with that, we've got some Silver Petrucelli invoices to pay, and we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get into this masonry invoice. So the first item we have here is we have two Silver Petrucelli Associates invoices. We had some back and forth, Lisa, on these with Marcia Hancock, and we believe now we have the actual correct amount balance due. Am I right?
Yes.
And that Marcia agrees with what payments we've made, and Silver Petrucelli agrees, and all the minds have come together that this is what we owe.
Yes.
All right. So with that, the first, and you can follow along with me by looking, our first invoice we have here is Silver Petrucelli and Associates invoice 191621. It's dated July of 2019. It's for $434.24. I'm not sure what the little two after that
I'm
indicates.
not sure either.
But either way, it's $434.24. This is the synopsis of going back through the older invoices for our contract and realizing that we paid all the amounts billed except for $434.24. So with that, I move that we approve the invoice for Gallup Hill School in the amount of $434.24.
second, Pete McIntyre.
Seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
Gary, you're muted if you said something.
I know we lost Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry's gone, but Gary, there he is.
Okay, yeah, okay, I,
Thank you.
There's your aye. All right, the ayes have it. Motion is approved. Next, I have Silver Petrucelli and Associates invoice 20-97 for the Ledyard Middle School. This is dated 1 January 2020. Again, we're cleaning up here, $3,324.70. And again, we're closing out the final amounts on what we owe here. And that invoice is in order, and I move that we make payment.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Second by Ms. McIntyre. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary
Kate
Schneider,
Palmer
aye.
Herb, aye.
With that, the ayes have it in parallel unison stereo, and the motion is approved. Next, I have, these are AIA application invoices from Silver Petrucelli. These are current for last month. The first is for Ledyard Middle School dated 1 May 2021, the amount of $299.25 under our time materials contract. And I move, the invoice is in order, and I move we make payment. Steve Jeskowitz, excuse me, motion's been made.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Second by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
With that, the ayes have it. That motion is approved. Next, I have for the other school, for Gallup Hill School, similar application for payment 21-989 from Silver Petrucelli and Associates, dated 1 May 2021, the amount of $1,559.25. Again, our time materials contract with the architect, it is in order, and I move that we make payment.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Second by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
And with that, the ayes have it, and the motion is approved. All right, next, as Wayne discussed earlier, he had a mason come out and take a look. Originally, we thought we were going to be looking at waterproofing some wall area that was not subject to any work that was ongoing. We weren't sure if we disturbed the soil a certain way and it was causing a leak, or perhaps more likely there was a leak there at the time that was there, but we never noticed it because it was a storage area. It wasn't a finished area. Either way, Mooney Masonry came out, took a look at that. They seem to think they found the problem. They applied some chimney water repellent, did some caulking, and we had some great rainstorms. It doesn't appear, it seems to be solving the problem. So this is a $350 bill for labor and material, and invoice 1497, the amount of $350, and I move that we make payment.
second Pete McIntyre,
Second by Ms. McIntyre. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor approving the invoice, signify by saying your name and I. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary Snyder, aye.
Kate DePalma Herb, aye.
The ayes have it. That motion is approved. All right, next we have the Ledyard High School Track and Field Project. I believe we have no action there. I'm still waiting from town finance on whether we're gonna do anything with fencing or a scoreboard. I've had nothing back on that. Wayne, have you heard anything more?
No, I haven't. I am going to the next meeting because of a bid waiver we have for something going on at Ag Science. If you want me to ask or something when I go, I'll be more than happy to.
It won't hurt. We'll find out what they tell us. That money is just gonna sit in the account until then. At some point, if we choose not to do anything with it, we'll close out that project and we'll let the town, just money we just haven't spent, which is always good. All right, the next item here is summer projects. And when I click on the link for the summer projects, it takes me just, well, here it is. Now it's opening. Okay. Wayne, do you want to discuss the summer projects, where you determine what the cost estimate are, what your plans are for this, and what you're asking?
Sure. Basically, it's in multiple steps. Last year, there was an approval of the renovations to high school classrooms and restrooms. Last year, we did a similar project to certain rooms at the high school. You gave me the go-ahead to go ahead and do them and then just report back to you. So I'm asking for that same permission on these projects, these two projects this year. Basically, my estimate.
We're losing you, Wayne.
Yeah, I'm not getting him at all.
Let's see, I'm on mute. Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll just get closer to the screen. Basically, the estimates are either firm quotes I have from contractors that are willing to do the work. And most of them are the same contractors we did last year. We have multiple cost requests on them. Some of them are state vendors, so we should be good there. I have gone ahead and requested them to begin getting the orders in for some of the material, like the fixtures for the restroom. We're finding that there is huge lead times on these. Some of this stuff is out now 6 or 8 weeks. So some of them are pure estimates. Like I have a figure in there for the restrooms for asbestos removal. They did asbestos removal on the first 2 restrooms. The one I did last year when we had it tested came up negative. So there was no need to abate. So I don't know what we're going to find in the last one we're doing. So basically, that's the first step on those. So I'd like to treat them the same way we did last year. As you know, last year we did, I believe it was 17 classrooms when the budget was projected at for 10, and we came in actually, the budget was 157. I think we came in at about 147. The last restroom that was done was 125, and I believe we came in last year at 85, and that included installing new tile on the walls and floors in both of the girls and boys room. So we made really good use of the funds. The other 2 items are the BMS system at Gales Ferry School, which has failed. In this year's capital project, which will be available in July, there was $115,000 to replace that system. So we'd like to move on that, try and get it in before the heating system. for the heating season in the fall. We had a lot of manual work being done on that this year, where we almost daily had to go over there and adjust valves and stuff to keep the heat levels in that building acceptable. We also have there is a renovations that were approved to the auditorium at the high school. And I wasn't sure that's a much larger amount. It's 400 and I think 60,000 if I'm not mistaken. So I wasn't sure how you wanted to move forward on that. Neither of these are come under state school facilities. And last, which was approved also, were the roofs, which would be under state school facilities. So I'd like at least the authorization on those to move forward with the application process and getting the required certifications that have to be approved by the town council into them so they can start approving them.
A couple things going on here, Wayne. We got the roofs, which is at this point here, we have not been assigned the roof projects yet by the town council. So therefore we have nothing to vote on that. Follow through your normal process to get those things started.
Yep.
So we're going to separate the roofs out for a minute to the side.
Mhm.
When I look at your attachment that we have, that Lisa attached here, the right-hand column for actual cost, that is the cost from last time you did this kind of work, correct?
That is what my quotes are right now.
All right, so the $85,000 quote here is to do 2 LHS bathrooms.
2 LHS bathrooms plus the 2 faculty bathrooms that are attached to them.
All right, so now just to confirm for the committee here, these funds are already in the account allocated to you for this type of work.
It's in the CNR allocated for this work, yes.
Okay, and at this point, all right. All right, so first we've got $85,000 for LHS restrooms. Also in the high school, we've got 14 classrooms for $152,000, which is renovating the classrooms.
Correct. That actually count. I don't know why 14 did I miss that. Or it's going to be 12 classrooms. One of them was the culinary room, which we spent a little bit longer than I would like to have on the design for there. And that at this point is out about 12 weeks before we can get the material that has to go in there. So there's no way that's going to be done this summer.
All right.
So that particular one will have to move off till next year.
All right, so also on your list here in the table portion, you have another $52,000 for carpet, tile, and paint in 8 classrooms in the Gales Ferry School.
Yes, that's for replacing the flooring in classrooms in that school.
All right, so what you're asking us for is to self-manage these projects and to conduct the bidding and award of this and purchase orders using meeting the town and state purchase order requirements.
Correct.
All right, now let's leave, and then on the Gales Ferry School BMS, is your plan to go out to bid for that?
Yes, that's way big too. Yeah, we don't have a choice on that. Requirements to send us out to bid on it.
Right, I wasn't sure if you had a proprietary system that you had to use or anything there. All
No.
right. All right, so with that, is there any questions anyone has? I want to separate out the high school auditorium and the BMS for a minute, but everything that's in the table, the $52,000 for the Gales Ferry 8 classrooms, the $152,046, and obviously it may wind up costing a little bit more with unknown things that pop up. For now, you said 12 classrooms, and then the 2 high school bathrooms and attached staff bathrooms. Does anybody have any questions about any of that work?
I would ask that you, the budgeted amount for the classrooms was 157, and for the, that's in the allotment, and it's 125 for the bathrooms. That there's a little wiggle room because I don't know whether we're going to find an asbestos problem, which could be $10,000 or $15,000 to abate.
All right, so what you're actually asking for is not to exceed 125 for the
Restrooms,
restrooms.
Yep.
And
157 for the classrooms.
well, actually 160 probably, because your estimate came in at 159, so I think 160 will give you a little bit of space there. You never know what you're going to find as well.
Yep.
and then 52,000 for the carpet and paint in the Gallup Ferry School.
Correct.
All right, so with that, not hearing anything else, I move that we authorize the Board of Ed facilities to self-manage summer 2021 projects to include the Ledyard High School restroom renovation at a cost not to exceed $100 and, make sure I got the right sheet here, $120,000. I'm sorry, 125, Wayne?
Yes, please.
$125,000. Classroom Ledyard High School renovations not to exceed $160,000. And Gallup Ferry School 8 classroom renovation not to exceed $52,000. And that motion is made with the consideration that these purchases be made in accordance with the town's and/or state purchasing requirements.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Then by Mr. McIntyre, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the work as the motion as made, signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Juskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Gary Snyder, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
Okay, with that, the ayes have it. That motion is approved. Wayne, as far as the Gallup Ferry School BMS and the LHS auditorium, are you developing specs for that bid?
Yes, I am.
We'll be able to see those at our next meeting?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'll have them both. I don't know about the specs for the auditorium. I am meeting with a vendor who has offered to drop specs at no cost to us. There'll be general specs, but yes, I should have something ready for your next meeting.
All right, I understand what's driving the BMS at Gallup Ferry School. You have to have that. All the lessons learned from the BMS at middle school and the Gallup Hill School can be put to use there. But on the auditorium, what's the driver there other than it's the lighting, audio and stuff is just old and at its useful life?
It's twofold. That it not only includes the audio and the lighting, it also includes the stage floor, which is in poor shape. Removal of there's 2 wings that were built out that are not structurally sound. I did have an engineer in to look at the stage itself, who said that there's no issues there with the actual stage. It also includes replacement of the curtains, which are pretty much shredded. They've been held together with safety pins and things like that. So it's to clean up everything. And right now there are wires running across the floor to a booth off to the side where they control the sound and lighting, which is a trip hazard going across the exit, going out, one of the emergency exits. So it's just basically clean up everything to make it more presentable and bring it into the 21st century. Currently, when they have an event, they have to go up on ladders to adjust every, light, to change the filters for if they want different colors. This would be LED lighting that would change automatically and that type of thing.
Understand. Kate, has Board of Ed Facilities reviewed all of these projects?
They have reviewed them, or they're aware of them. They haven't reviewed specs or anything, because, we couldn't, there was no sense in going out for specs until we knew what was going to happen on whether the town was going to approve the funding.
Okay, as far as the ones that we approved here tonight, they're pretty straightforward. Those are that's standard renovation stuff. As far as Kate, will facilities be reviewing the BMS and or auditorium work at your meeting, or have you already?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I'm not on facilities right now, but I'll be attending the meetings because yes, we will be reviewing.
Oh, did you get kicked off facilities?
So I actually was removed from facilities, not removed, that makes it sound like it's a bad thing, but when I have not been part of the facilities committee since last year. But Anthony and I talked about trying to realign PMBC and facilities back together again. So that's part of a shift that he just worked out.
Excellent.
So that you'll see the new chair of facilities will now be part of PMBC.
So speaking of Mr. Chairman Ferry, has he come up with another name from the Board of Ed to be the other representative?
Yeah, so that'll be Steve Munger. So since Mr. Russick stepped down, Steve Munger was shifted over to chair of facilities, and he will now be recommended for to be appointed to the PMBC so that we can be on these meetings together and support.
Excellent, excellent. That's the answer I was hoping to hear. Not the person's name so much, but that fact that we have someone coming. All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So Wayne, that's all you have for us on this tonight, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. All right. So with that, let me jump back into our agenda here. All right. So I have got an item here. I did receive an email from on behalf of the town council from Roxanne Mayer that discussed, the town is now moving back toward in-person meetings. There's two things going on here. Number one is when we have our meetings via Zoom like this, the cost to the town is actually a little bit less. And let me just point out, well, I like to have meetings in public where people can come and attend. I don't know if we were to have our meetings in person that we would be able to record them because we don't have the equipment in the places that we hold our meetings, nor are we required to. But also from our vendors in the case of Silver Petrucelli and Associates and O&G. Well, O&G's a flat rate to us, and whether they drive across town or not doesn't cost us anything. Every hour that Dan's spending driving, he's not fixing problems on a punch list. But in the case of Silver Petrucelli and Associates, if Steve June attends that meeting in person, we are going to get charged, mileage and time. But more importantly, the members of the committee, because we're not like the town council where we have the video set up and everything all the time. For the members of the committee, I'd like to hear your thoughts about if you would prefer to stay in virtual for a few more months, or if you're ready to go back to in-person meetings. I know Gary or Jerry's not online. I can follow up with him. But just around the table, again, I don't need to hear about who's vaccinated, who's not, or anything, but just your general thoughts on returning to in-person meetings. In any order, just go right ahead.
Pete McIntyre, I really like in-person meetings, please.
All right, you want to go back to in person, Roger?
This is Gary. Zoom works really well for me because I can work around my other commitments at Waterford. Tuesdays, they're going back to in-house meetings from virtual, and that means I'm in my front yard now because it wasn't a meeting tonight. But on the other nights that I have meetings, I can attend 2 meetings, either from my car, from my house, or from my office. So Zoom for the next couple months is fine.
Okay, Kate?
So I can certainly attend in person. I think that if we had the hybrid approach, that would answer a lot of the questions that the items that you had brought up about being able to record and have the other companies join us virtually. I like the option of virtual because my work schedule has been so demanding lately that sometimes I'm joining us as I'm walking out of the shipyard. So I like the option of being able to join virtually, but would also be fine joining in person.
Understand, thank you. And I kind of feel the same way. What I would like, Lisa, as far as, although you're not a voting member of the committee, you are in fact at all our meetings. Do you have any input?
I think either in person or Zoom. I think a hybrid might be a little challenging, maybe for me. But I mean, I've tried that on some other like union things. It just seems like it's, especially with me doing the minutes, it just seems like it's more parts for me, but whatever.
Okay, so based on that input here, we don't have to have a vote on it because I just need to give feedback to, right now we have the option to continue as we're doing. I think for the meetings in July and August, we'll continue with our Zoom meetings until the town has given me an option. People have gotten used to being able to get this data different ways, watch the meeting afterwards. I've gotten some comments on citizens and things. Once I get some more information, I don't want to have to move our meetings to the town council chambers because that limits us for special meetings and things. But also just the setup of all that infrastructure and things. Right now it's minimal infrastructure. So for the month of July and August, I think we'll just remain in remote meetings, and then September, our goal will be to go back to in-person meetings, even if they're not hybrid. So I think that's it. All right. We have nothing. Yeah.
Just so you know, I know you were holding the meetings here at the Board of Ed. We do have the Smart board there. They're currently holding the Board of Ed meetings in a hybrid in-person format there where they can still record them. So that's another option too at some point in the future if you need it.
And they're live meetings there using that equipment?
Yes, there's a live meeting with the board, and then anybody from the public can zoom in and participate as.
But I guess the question is, so
But-
if a member of that's attending though is not in person, are they able to remotely vote?
Yes, yes.
Where
Yes.
are they recorded to, Wayne? Because I know like now on Zoom, we just have to, the Zoom, we just take the recording and we throw it in the P drive and then MIS puts it on the thing. So
You
I
should
don't
be
know.
able to do the same thing.
I don't know how that would work.
Basically, we use Google Meet, they use, or whatever they're using, and the superintendent just starts it there on his laptop from the meeting. So you would, if you were in person, you'd be able to start it. Otherwise, you would start it just this way. And the camera in that room would become another screen of people that would be on the, on the list.
Well, this will give us a month or so to figure it out.
Yep.
So right now, we'll just stick with remote meetings until further notice. In the meantime, we can investigate options that we have. All right, so with that, is there anything else anyone has to say tonight's meeting before we adjourn? It is a special meeting, we can't add anything. Just to confirm, Lisa, our next meeting is in July, and it is Wednesday, July 7th, correct?
Correct. And because of my schedule, I will need to post the agenda on June 29th. So I would need any information by the 28th
Awesome, all right.
for that.
Got it. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Meeting is
Good
adjourned.
night, thank you.
It's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Uh,